Hey everyone, Someone here with Nintendo Life, and today I'm going to be breaking down everything that we know about Switch 2 and Switch 1 games and the compatibility issues and game key cards and all this stuff. It's been very, very confusing, and I'm here to break it down with you. Just real quick, I hit my microphone, I'm sorry. I'm here to break it down with you really quick. First off, we have the actual physical Nintendo Switch 2 games. These are games that have the game data actually on the cartridge. When you slot it into a Switch 2, it will play the game. It'll play the Switch 2 game, and usually these are Switch 2 exclusive games, so you'll plug the game like Mario Kart World, which is a Switch 2 exclusive, into the Switch, and it will play. Try to plug in a Switch 1, and it will not work. This is super straightforward, super basic. They're a different color, too. The Switch 2 game cartridges are going to be red instead of black, like the original Switch 1. So that's the simple part. That's where it makes sense. Switch 2 game goes in Switch 2, but not Switch 1. That makes sense. But we have seen that some Switch 2 games will work in the Switch 1, which doesn't make any sense, and I'm gonna explain that for you. So we all know that the Switch 2 is going to have Switch 2 Edition games. These are games that were on the Switch, the original Switch 1 originally, but they're getting upgrades. Like, for example, Tears of the Kingdom is getting Zelda Notes, which is a app in the Nintendo Switch app. It's getting a frame rate boost. It's getting better performance. It's getting a visual boost. So that's the Switch 2 Edition. It makes the game look better. It enhances it. Or for Kirby Star-Crossed World. That's an add-on in the Switch 2 Edition, along with the additional frame rate and stuff. So if you pop a Switch 2 Edition game, for example, just keep Tears of the Kingdom, for example. If we pop the Switch 2 Edition of Tears of the Kingdom in a Switch 2, it'll play Tears of the Kingdom Switch 2 Edition. But if you pop the Switch 2 Edition of Tears of the Kingdom into an original Switch 1, it will play just base Tears of the Kingdom. It will play the regular base game without the Switch 2 Edition data. So the Switch 1 and the Switch 2 version are both on the same cartridge. So for the Switch 2 Edition cartridges, the original Switch 1 game and the Switch 2 game data are both on that same cartridge. Or what a lot of people are thinking, it's actually just the Switch 1 game with the expansion pack in there as a separate bit of code. So that way, when you plug it into a Switch 2, it's like, oh, I've been plugged into a Switch 2, run it with the extra expansion pack data, or it'll be like, oh, if I've been plugged into a Switch 1, just play the regular game without the expansion data. So that's cool. So if you, for example, have like Tears of the Kingdom Switch 2 Edition, but your friend only has an original Switch 1, he can still play, you can still loan your game to him, and he can still play it. It just won't be the Switch 2 Edition. I hope that made sense. Even the way I explained it, was kind of confusing, but I hope that made sense for you guys. I hope that made sense. Next up, we have Switch 2 Edition Upgrade Pack. So I know a lot of people are not going to want to pay for a full game again, because Breath of the Wild at launch was $60, so the Switch 2 Edition is going to be $70. Tears of the Kingdom at launch was $70, so the Switch 2 Edition is going to be $80. And, you know, if you already own the game, I don't think you would want to buy it again. So Nintendo is adding upgrade packs. So for Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, they are $10. So if you already own Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom, or Kirby, you can, or Mario Party Jamboree was one of the ones that is getting an upgrade pack. You could buy the upgrade pack if you already own the game, and you can add those extra Switch 2 Edition features to the game, which is very, very, very helpful. And the price varies depending on the upgrade pack. So for both the Zelda games, it is going to be $10 for the upgrade pack, but for something more substantial, like Kirby and the Forgotten Land, the Star-Crossed Worlds expansion, or the Mario Party Jamboree TV expansion, it's going to be $20. So it doesn't matter if you have the physical version of the original Switch 1 game or the digital version, the upgrade pack will still work for both versions. Finally, we have keycards. This is the one that people have been complaining about. Game keycards. Basically, a Nintendo Switch 2 game keycard is a license to download the game from the internet, or a key. So something like this was done similarly with the original Switch. You'd get a box. It wasn't done much, but you'd get a regular box that would look like a regular physical game. But when you opened it, it would have just a blank pamphlet in there. Well, not blank, but it would have a pamphlet in there with a code that you'd put into eShop to download the game. Now the thing about this is after you put in that code and download the game, that game would now be linked to your Nintendo account. So that game was yours. If you wanted to get rid of it or give it away or sell it, you couldn't do that. That game is now linked to your Nintendo account. It is yours forever. But game keycards is a license to download the game. So you put in the game keycard into the game slot and it will download the game from the internet. So you still need internet. You just don't have to open eShop and all that stuff. It'll download the game. But the weird part is that you have to have the game keycard in to launch the game, even though all the game data is on your Switch 2 console. There's no game data on the game keycard. The game keycard is just a license to download and run the game. You have the actual game downloaded to your Switch. So it's like a cross between digital and physical, and it's kind of weird. But the one thing that makes it good is that the game keycard does not link to your Nintendo account. So like, if you put the game keycard in your Switch, that, even though it's getting downloaded from the internet and the game is a digital software on your Switch, or your Switch 2, sorry, it's not linked to your Nintendo account. So if you eventually down the line wanted to like loan it to a friend or sell it or something, you could, which I think, that's pretty cool. So a lot of people have been stressing out about the game keycard, saying it's going to be terrible and all that stuff. I don't think it's going to be horrible. I mean, I do agree with some people. I do like having physical media. Like, I like having the game physically because, in 10, 20 years, the Nintendo servers are going to go down and then you won't be able to play your games anymore. And that's why you want to have it physically so you can always play it. Like, that's like Apple Music, for example. I have Apple Music, and Apple Music is great. I have a bunch of songs downloaded in my phone. But as soon as I stop paying for that service, even though the songs are downloaded to my phone, it won't let me listen to them anymore. Which is why I also buy CDs and vinyl of my favorite music. So that way I literally physically own the music and I can listen to it whenever I want to. That's the great thing about physical copies of games and stuff. You can play it whenever you want to, opposed to digital titles, where in the future sometimes you'll be like, it'll not work because of like servers being down or something like that. So it's a lot. I just packed a lot of information into this 8.5 minutes. So I hope you got all of it. I'll put a summary in the description of this video so you can read over it. I'll put a very, very, very quick, sweet, short summary. But just real quick, we have game key cards, which only work on the Switch 2, and it is a license to digitally download the game from the internet. We have Switch 2 Edition games, which is a game, a key card, or not a key card, a physical game cartridge with the Switch 1 version of the game on it, along with the Switch 2 upgrade pack on it. So you can plug it into a Switch 1 and play the Switch 1 version, or you also plug it into a Switch 2 and play the Switch 2 version. We have Switch 2 upgrade packs. That way, if you already own the physical or digital version of a Switch 1 game, you can upgrade it to the Switch 2 edition. And then next, or finally, I keep stuttering here. Finally, we have the Switch 2 version games like Mario Kart World and stuff that will only work on the Switch 2. Exclusive, that's the word. We have the Switch 2 exclusive games, which are games that will only work on the Switch 2, and plugging them into the Switch 1 will do nothing. Now, I have seen people be like, I wonder why the Switch 2 game cartridges don't have that little notch like the 3DS cartridges did. So if you don't know, the DS was the original line of the flip-out handheld system, and its cartridges were just a square. But 3DS was the successor to it, like the upgrade to it. For example, we can use an analogy. The DS would be the Switch, and the 3DS would be the Switch 2. But the 3DS, it had the same size cartridges, except it had a little nub, like a little lip, sticking out the edge. So that way you couldn't stick it into an original DS, but you could stick the DS cartridges into the 3DS. There's nothing like that with the Switch 2 and Switch 1 games. They're just different colors. Now, some people have pointed out that the Switch 2 games are slightly different on the bottom corner, where there's a little notch, which this is my guess, this is not confirmed in concrete, so this is my guess, but for the Switch 2 exclusive games, I'm thinking only the Switch 2 exclusive games are going to have that notch, so that way you can't insert it into a Switch 1. But the Switch 2 edition games that you can play on either a Switch 1 or a Switch 2 are not going to have that notch, so that way you can insert it in between both consoles. But that's just my guess. Tell me what you think in the comments below. Tell me what you think about this whole physical digital game situation, and then tell me what you think about the game key cards, because I think it's a mess, but I think the game key cards will definitely be a lot better than just buying a download code in a box. But I don't know. Tell me what you think, and drop a like, subscribe if you enjoyed this video. I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.